Apostrophe CMS Onboarding Series. Pieces. Part 1, Creating Pieces and Piece Type Pages. Pieces are standalone documents containing structured content. This content can be material that is presented on a page, like a blog article or a team roster. However, pieces can also be used for storing other types of data. For example, the Apostrophe CMS user module extends the Apostrophe CMS piece type module and stores each project user as a piece. Because pieces are standalone documents, they can easily be retrieved from the database. In this tutorial, we are going to create a review piece type and the accompanying pages for showing individual pieces as well as all of the pieces belonging to a specific category. This will introduce us to filtering and query builders. We will also dive further into localizing our user interface. You can follow along with the tutorial to modify your own project, or to see the progress of the project while following this tutorial, switch to the sec 2-5-pieces branch of the Apostrophe Onboarding Project repo on GitHub, linked in the comments below. We are once again going to use the CLI tool for the creation of our review piece. We are also going to take advantage of an additional flag, page, to create an optional set of piece type pages for the display of our pieces. Since we are creating new pages, after creation, we'll not only need to add our modules to the app.js file, but we will also have to add the new page type to the modules @apostrophe CMS page index.js file. We will start by modifying the modules review index.js file that extends the @apostrophe CMS piece type core module. I'll paste in the code from the written tutorial and then walk through it. The fields object of this code adds 5 input schema fields and groups them into 2 tabs, content and meta. The first 3 fields on the content tab are what you would expect for a review article. First, the author of the piece. Next, a single image from the article that can be featured in any markup as featured image. And finally, the actual content, with the rich text and image widgets, along with our custom ratings widget for the author to rate the product. The featured image has an area schema field type that we are adding an image widget into for the editor to be able to add a single image. In this case, it might have been preferable to instead use a relationship field. Using a relationship allows the editor to directly select an image for the input without first having to add a widget to the area. This comes with the trade-off that you can't specify what resolution or aspect ratio the image should be. In the meta tab, we're adding 2 fields. First, we are assigning the article to a review type category. We will use this for selective display and filtering of the reviews onto individual index pages. Second, we are adding the ability for the user to toggle whether the review should be featured with a Boolean field, is featured. We will also use this to filter the reviews that we display in the browser. Following the fields object, there is a filters object. In piece type modules, the filters setting configures the pieces manager interface by adding and removing filtering fields to view only certain pieces. Archived and visibility filters are included by default. These settings cascade from the base classes to project level classes without requiring those settings be declared again. The filters object is configured with subsections add and remove, and can either be added as a static object, as shown in this example, or a function that takes self and options and returns an object. Filters must correspond to an existing field's name or a custom query builder on the piece type. We will cover custom queries in the Adding Extensions tutorial. This block of code introduces filters for the is featured and category fields, enabling the user to display or exclude featured pieces and reviews from particular categories, respectively. We will return to see how we can use the is featured filter in the section on creating review pages. Taking a look at the review piece manager, we can see that at the bottom of the filter dropdown, we now have selections for featured and category. Making a selection for either of these will change the pieces displayed in the manager. By default, the piece manager displays the piece title on the left and the date the piece was last edited. This layout can be modified by using the columns configuration object. Like the filters object, the columns setting configures the pieces manager, adding and removing the piece data in the interface. Default columns include title, updated at, and visibility. Like the filter settings, the add and remove properties cascade from the base class. In this case, we are electing to display the category of the review to the right of the last edited column in the piece manager. Going back over to the code, in the options object, we have the standard label and plural label properties, but we also have a new property, I18N. This option allows us to localize the review piece admin UI to different languages by passing browser true. It is slightly different from the localization that we introduced when creating our views, fragments, topbar.html fragment. There, we are adding localization to our template, not the interface the author is using. In the template, our localized strings were within nunchucks tags and past the __t helper. In this case, we don't have to do anything extra. Adding the I18N option will let Apostrophe know that we want to translate any label where we have supplied a corresponding translation string. Just like with the top bar, we need to create a module level folder for our translation strings. Create a modules review I18N folder and add a file named n.json inside. Into that file, we're going to add all the labels from each of the schema fields, including the labels for the choices in the select field. We also need a translation file for our DE locale, so create a de.json file in the same location and add the strings. If we were to switch our admin UI to German, we would see that the editor modal name and fields are now displayed using the strings that we added. In this case, since we are localizing the strings within a single project, we aren't using a namespace. If we were intending on distributing this module to multiple projects as a package, we would need to make a few changes to our index.js file. First, we would need to prefix all the label strings to be translated with the namespace. For example, label review:author. Second, we would need to move the I18N property out of the options object to be a top-level property. That property would then receive a namespace named object with the browser true property. We now have a way to create review pieces. If we were to spin up our project, we would see a new item, Reviews, in the admin bar. Our piece type will be automatically added to the Quick Create menu as well. Clicking on the plus icon to open that menu, we would get a drop-down that will let us quickly add a new review piece by both creating the piece and opening the edit modal without having to open the piece manager first. As we will revisit in the admin bar configuration tutorial, you can configure this bar to group items or prevent them from appearing in the Quick Create menu. While we can now create new review pieces, they won't be displayed anywhere in our site. One way that we can display our pieces is to use a piece page type. Our CLI command has already created a modules/review-page folder for us. Opening the index.js file, we can see the normal extend and options properties. Because this folder is named review-pages, Apostrophe automatically knows that these pages should be associated with the review piece type. If we wanted to give this module a different name, we would have to add the piece module name property to the options object with a value of review. We will alter this file after we create our index.html page. The index.html page is located in the piece page type module views folder. This page is meant to display a listing of pieces and takes markup much like our homepage. You can elect to use the same template as the homepage or create an entirely new one. In the case of our project, we are going to mimic the look of our homepage with the same top bar, footer, and eventually navigation fragments. Open the modules, review page, views, index.html file, and add the following code that I'm going to copy and paste from the written tutorial and then walk you through. Walking through the code, we start with our extends command. This allows our page to use the same head, top bar, and footer as the home page. Next up, we import markup from the @CMS pager module. This markup contains several nunchucks macros, which are a little like fragments that we worked with when creating our homepage. These macros are helpers that parse the number of pieces that we want to display on the page, deliver them in customizable groups, and create a breadcrumb trail for navigating through the groups. The final block below the main content adds in the markup for our navigation breadcrumbs. This code calls the imported macro and passes in several items from the data object that is available on any piece page type index page. The current page contains what page of results is currently being shown, starting with 1. The total pages gives the total number of pages that there are given the current group size. The optional shown option defines the maximum number of pages that should be displayed in the page or breadcrumb display at one time. If the total number of pages exceeds this, the macro will insert ellipses either at the beginning or the end to indicate that there are more pages available. The optional class property will add these classes to the wrapper around the breadcrumbs. Finally, the macro needs the URL of the page in order to correctly construct the links. All of this data is available for you to create your own navigation macros. Returning to the main markup of the page, after adding a tag to add our HTML to the main block, we open a Bootstrap container. Within that container, we add several wrapper divs with Bootstrap styling. In addition to the H1 tag containing the main heading for the page, we also have a button being added with conditional logic. Above the main block, we are getting the current URL of the page, including any query parameters using data.page._URL. We can use another property of the data object, data.query, in our conditional logic to determine if there is a query parameter of isFeatured equals true. If so, a show all button is displayed with secondary Bootstrap styling. The URL for the button is dynamically generated by passing the current path variable that we set at the top to the apostrophe template filter build using a pipe. This will remove the isFeatured query parameter by setting it to null. If the query parameter isn't present in the current page URL, a show featured only button with primary Bootstrap styling will be added. The URL for this button will also be constructed with the same filter, but the isFeatured equals true query parameter will be added to the URL. Please note that this is completely independent of the fact that we are using isFeatured as a filter for the piece manager. Most schema fields have filters already available. The values of the fields will get added to the fields in the database document. So for example, we could add $author equals name, and the page would only display review pieces by that author. For fields that contain strings, individual words are added to the document search fields. So for example, a piece titled Best Bed Buys for 2023 would be returned by adding a query parameter of $title equals bed to the URL. However, a custom filter is needed if you want to filter based on a derived value, like the year of publication when the date field also contains the month and day. We will cover this in the Adding Extensions tutorial. We aren't going to step through the remainder of the main content markup of the page in detail since it uses familiar concepts from past tutorials. In brief, we set up a for-in loop to go through all the piece objects available in the data.pieces array. For each, we extract a featured image, a link to the individual piece page, the piece title, and the piece author. Note that we are getting the link as _URL. The underscore in front indicates that it is a property that is computed, not retrieved from the database. In this case, this is because pieces can be assigned to different parent pages, and these links need to be computed dynamically at the time of rendering. We will cover assigning pieces to different pages in the next sections. Now that we have our index page created, we can reopen our modules review page index.js file and update our options object to add per page 9, which will cause the review pieces to be displayed in groups of 9 per page. At this point, you can go ahead and spin the site up and create some review pieces. You can then add a new page, selecting Review for the page type from the dropdown on the right. Since my project has the database from the final project already loaded, I have review pieces and pages already created. As you can see, our reviews are in groups of 9 with navigation at the bottom. Clicking on the Show Featured Only button changes the presented reviews to just the 8 that are marked as featured. Since they all fit on one page, the navigation goes away. Clicking on the Show All button brings back the filtered reviews and the navigation. We now have a page to display all of our reviews, but we still need a template for showing an individual piece. Open the Modules, Review Page, Views, Show.html file, and add in the following code. I'm going to copy it from the written tutorial and paste it in. The markup here is straightforward. One thing to note is that the markup is being populated by items from data.piece, whereas the index.html file was using data.pieces. We're also making use of a helper from the @CMS image module, apos.image.sourceset. This will return a string containing a comma-separated list of each of the image sizes paired with a view width. This can help page loading speed by allowing the browser to pick the optimal image size to load. Looking back at the schema fields of our review piece, we added a select field to be able to add a category. For example, reviews of vehicles or appliances. We want to give our site visitors the ability to look at just the reviews within a certain category. Luckily, Apostrophe provides an easy way to accomplish this. The @CMS piece page type module provides two methods, filter by index page and choose parent page, that we can extend to allow us to assign specific pieces to certain pages. We will start by adding a select to our review page/index.js file that will allow the editor to select what types of pieces should be displayed on the page. Open that file and add this code after the options object, replacing the existing code. This code will create a single new schema field that the author can use to select the page category. We used a similar schema field in creating our review piece module. The big difference is that here we are dynamically populating the choices. This is a powerful way to ensure that the range of choices stays current, even if, for example, there's a new category of reviews added. In this case, we are passing the choices property a string and not the actual method. This string refers to a method that we can either import or define within this module and should always end with parentheses to indicate that it's referring to a method. Next, we need to create our add category choices method for our select to use. After the fields, add this code. We're taking advantage of the methods configuration function that is part of every Apostrophe module. This allows us to define JavaScript functions to be used in the same module or to be called by any other custom module. This method always returns an object of functions. In this case, it is returning a single async function, add category choices. Now let's take a look at this code. While it is possible to directly query the database, Apostrophe provides a way to make a wide variety of queries without knowing advanced MongoDB syntax. Further, queries using the Apostrophe API are secure and will only return content the active website user is allowed to access. Both page and piece modules have access to a find method that initiates a database query. This method takes the rec object and optional criteria and options. The all reviews variable uses the find method, passing it the request object from the index page. From within the review module, we could use await self.findRec because the method would be restricted to only review pieces. In this case, however, we're querying the review pieces from the review page module, so we need to reference the find method of that review module using self.apos.modules.review.findRec. This query will initialize a query to return all the review pieces. These results are next filtered and modified by several query builders. These query builders can alternatively be passed as an object to the options argument of the find method, instead of chaining them as is shown here. The first query builder we are adding is project. This query builder limits the data that is returned from our find operation and takes an object with document properties to be included as keys, and the value of each set to 1 or true. You can also use project to eliminate fields by setting the value to 0 or false, but you cannot provide a project with both inclusion and exclusion criteria. In this case, we want to provide our content editor with a list of all the review categories. We don't need to supply the titles or authors, so we limit the amount of data that needs to be passed. Some other common query builders are sort and limit. You can read more about them in the documentation. Finally, we pass our query to the toArray query method. The other common query method is toObject. Both these methods take the criteria and refinements added by the query builders and add logic to tell the database how we want the data returned, as an array of objects or a single object, respectively. Our next variable definition takes the returned query array, extracts all the categories, removes duplicates, and assigns the array of unique categories to unique categories. Finally, we are returning an array of choices to the select schema field. We are adding an initial choice of all so that the editor can choose to have a page where results aren't filtered according to the review category. The first letter of each category is converted into uppercase so that the labels match our translation strings. Now that we have a way for the user to determine what review pieces they want to be displayed on the page, we need to extend the filter by index page method. In this case, we're going to use the extend methods configuration method. This allows a method to essentially improve rather than replace a method defined in the base module. Like the methods configuration method, it should return an object of methods. Each method it returns should take the same arguments as the original plus the underscore super argument. Add this code after the methods configuration, making sure to add a comma to separate the two. I'm going to paste the code in and then we'll walk through it. The original filter by index page method takes the query and page arguments. Since we are extending the method, we are also adding the underscore super argument. Inside the function, we check to make sure that the content creator has selected a category and that it isn't all. If so, we take advantage of the fact that Apostrophe automatically adds query builders for most schema fields. In this case, adding a query builder that checks the value of the review piece category schema field for each piece is equal to the category that the editor selected. We have now solved one side of our routing equation. Each new review page that the user creates can be set to display pieces of a selected category. However, once we click on the link to take us to the individual reviews, that review show.html page won't have information about the parent page. We need to extend the choose parent page method to assign the correct one. After the filter by index page method we just added, add the following code. I'm going to paste it in and then walk you through it. Again, the original method took two arguments that we're prefacing with the underscore super argument. The pages argument is going to contain an array of all the pages that are in the database that are the review page type. The piece argument is going to be the individual piece that is being requested for display. First, we are checking that the category is set for the piece that is being requested and that there is more than one review page. If not, then we return the results of the original method using underscore super and passing pages and piece as arguments. Otherwise, we set the piece category constant to either the value the author selected or all if the field doesn't have a string value. This is then used with the JavaScript array.prototype.find, not the apostrophe query initiator, to select a page from the pages array. As fallback, if no page has been created with a matching category, it will fall back to the parental method to select the correct page. At this point, you can spin the project up and create a new page for every category, plus another for all to display all the pieces. Or if you haven't done so yet, you can import the database from the final project. See the repository README linked below to learn how to accomplish this. Again, I've already imported the database, so my project is preloaded with a large number of review pieces and all of the pages for the categories. Previewing one of these pages, you can see that only selected review pieces are displayed. Clicking on an individual review takes you to the show.html template for that piece and changes the URL to indicate the parent category. Creating a page with the category set to all will create an index page that displays all of our review pieces. Pieces are a powerful way to produce reusable content that can be displayed throughout your project. In this tutorial, we created a piece type called Review for our project. When creating our piece module, we looked at how to add localization strings for our custom module UI using the I18N property. This is slightly different from the localization of the homepage top bar fragment we created in our Pages tutorial. We also took a brief look at how we can customize the piece editor modal by adding filters and extra columns. Along with our new review piece, we created a piece page type with HTML markup to display individual pieces using the show.html template and display multiple pieces using the index.html template. We utilized the Apostrophe pager module to look at how to limit the number of pieces displayed at once and create a breadcrumb trail for the display of the rest on our index page. We also looked at how we can have multiple index pages in our project, each with different pieces associated by extending the filters by index page and choose parent page methods. This introduced the module configuration function extend methods. Finally, we looked at how you can add choices to a select field dynamically in order to keep the category choices the content editor can make up to date. This gave us the opportunity to look at the Apostrophe query builders for easily interrogating the project database. There are times when you want to be able to display pieces mixed into other content on your pages and not just display them on dedicated pages. In the next tutorial, we're going to look at alternative ways to display pieces, including creating a widget that takes advantage of the featured flag and using the relationship schema field. If you have any questions about this tutorial or want more help starting your Apostrophe CMS project, please join our vibrant community in Discord. You can join right now by following the link in the comments. We hope that you will continue along with our tutorial series and subscribe to the other great videos in our channel.